So what I'd like to do at this point is to bring up the moderator of the panel. So Brad Yasser, co-founder and managing partner of CrowdMentor. If you're here, could you come on up to the front? Here he comes. He's got a big smile. That's a good sign, right? And then we have some of our panelists, some of our rock star panelists. This is going to be a blockbuster panel. It's going to be a good discussion. So speaking of rock stars, Richard Titus, managing partner of ARC Advisors. He's in the back. He's coming up. Thomas Lebenbacher, the founder of B52 Bank. And also Dima, I saw him earlier, Dima Zaitsev, head of international PR for ICO Box. If you guys could all come up, take the stage. Let's give these guys a big, warm welcome.
It's Sunday, so I didn't wear a suit.
You guys have enough mics? I'll borrow this back from you afterwards.
Hello, everyone.
Got it?
I want to thank Michael again for having us one more time in CoinAgenda in Europe. It's exciting to be here. We're going to do a quick round of introductions in case you guys don't know the panel, and then we'll jump in. I'll start. My name is Brad Yasser. I am the managing partner of CrowdMentor, and CrowdMentor is a strategic advisory firm in the blockchain and crypto space.
I'm Richard Titus. I'm the co-founder really of ARC, which has two sides of the business. We have an asset management business, which is a venture fund, syndicate business, and a registered investment advisor, and ARC Advisors, which is a capital markets business doing ICO advisory, investment banking, and sort of traditional regulated capital markets activities.
Hi, my name is Thomas. I'm co-founder of Bank52. We are establishing the regulated bank for blockchain-based banking. We are in the final stage of acquiring a European bank, which is within the European Union. And obviously what we heard today in the morning, it's a gap. I mean, we're filling the gap of having a bank partner who's doing kind of digital banking on the one side, crypto banking, hybrid banking, taking the assets or the USBs of both sides of banking into one, and of course also tokenization for any kind of corporates. So I'm happy to have the conversation.
Hello guys, my name is Dima Zaitsev and I'm a head of international PR at ICO Box. You probably all heard about our company. We help startups to launch their ICOs. So we help with all sides from marketing up to technology. Thanks.
So jumping into the topic, our topic is acceleration and incubation in blockchain innovation. And I'm going to start with a controversial idea. I think we can accelerate and incubate more blockchain projects by removing the blockchain out of them. What do you guys think?
Do you want to go first? I don't actually understand that statement.
Let me clarify. So the more we talk about blockchain, this unknown technology to a lot of people, it's confusing and it creates barriers of adoption. As soon as we have the Netscape moment in blockchain and stop talking about the internet or the blockchain, but actually talking about the project itself, we're gonna, we all incubate and accelerate projects here between the four of us. I think that's gonna make the adoption a lot faster.
That's interesting. So I as we know, I founded a bunch of companies, 17 in all, and including a big company, Razorfish and Schematic, who are two of the biggest agencies in the world. So I lived through 4 of these innovation cycles, the big ones. And in the early days of Razorfish, I would go to meetings, and IBM had this presentation where they had these big flaming E logos, and they talked about e-business. And so the thing I would always do was kind of a running gag is I'd get on the panel with them and I'd say, listen, like we're Razorfish, we build businesses. It happens that those businesses' primary consumer interface is on the internet, but that's soon going to be every business. So it's not really special. We just have to be specialist in we're a new company and we focused on this new opportunity. But I kind of agree with you. I think to me the biggest blocker for the acceleration of innovation in blockchain right now is there's an oversupply of founders, companies, and ideas, and an undersupply of capital, and an incredibly murky regulatory environment. And the combination of those 3 factors has caused everything to slow down like 80% in the last 2 months.
So how do we change that? Dima?
Well, Well, it's kind of an education. It sounds a bit stupid, but I was part of a blockchain fund, and we have been raising funds from banks. And we found out that banks are actually, they don't understand blockchain, but they could benefit great from the blockchain. So in fact, all of those banks have not invested, but they love to see the benefits, and you have to digest in a way that you just give it to them, they take it, use it, and take the benefits.
Actually, just as a note, so I have actually personally been one of the people who had their traditional commercial bank account closed because of their crypto activities. And so I literally got an email from a bank I've banked with for 10 years that said, we love you. However, our compliance department has said we have to close your commercial accounts. We are looking at working in crypto, and we'd like to invite you to be on our advisory panel. I said, so let me get this straight. You're closing my bank accounts, and you want me to sit on your advisory panel? No offense.
Well, even one more, which is actually it's an experience which we should not share here because we are all innovators and looking for a bright future. However, we have a bank account, a commercial bank account with Credit Suisse in Switzerland. And we have been sponsoring an ICO event. And we submitted the invoice for the transaction. And they said, because of you are somehow with ICO connected, we don't like this, please find another bank account. Yeah. So that's actually why we are here, because you're doing AML, you're doing KYC, you're doing all that stuff. It's just another currency in a nutshell. And there's a lot of business out there for the future.
What do you think? Oh, you're the moderator.
You know what, guys? I personally think that we are too concentrated around traditional banking system, how to disrupt traditional banking system, how to implement blockchain in the banking system, and a whole lot of stuff related to different sides of banking system. But the blockchain itself could be implemented everywhere. And if we'll take a look only at financial side, we could see a lot of different opportunities not related to traditional banks. Let's see if we are talking about acceleration. So let's take an example from traditional film industry. If you'll take a look a bit deeper, you'll see that there are just maybe a couple of companies, couple of funds that could invest money and let you film the movie. And I personally think that the next stage of the whole blockchain market, of the whole ICO market, will be made by these new accelerators that are much more specific. So they do not accelerate every company on the market. They could not implement blockchain at every company of the market, but instead they could help you to film your movie using the funds collected by ICOs related to the industry. So that is the way how I do see the future here. Thank you.
Since you mentioned ICOs, let's go and focus on that a little bit. We've seen a shifting in appetite for ICOs lately. From earlier on, where there was a lot of focus in public sales and fear of missing out, short-term, limited amount, and now it's moving more into the private sales stage, where there are longer private sales and sometimes not even a public sale. What is your take on that change?
The both ways should work at the same time. So for some companies, it's really better to have only traditional fundings. But for other companies, it's really essential to have as much as possible, not only dollars, but also as much as possible new users. And let's do not forget that ICO itself, it has two sides. The first one everybody knows and remembers about is actual money. And the other side, a lot of people forget about, is user acquisition. And
it's
for many companies, that second goal should be at the first place.
Thomas?
I think it depends on the project. As we started with the utility token, which was, let's say, a couple of months ago, and we found out it doesn't really make a lot of sense. We are, as a bank, we are really looking for huge money, and we have been changing it to a security token. A security token which needs a prospect, which needs an application, etc., etc. It's hard work, but it makes sense at the end. And we actually have inside a convertible loan, which is more than the benefits of a cryptocurrency actually put into a typical investment instrument which is understood by traditional finance or traditional investors.
I think it's, I'm going to say something mildly controversial. So as a serial entrepreneur, I can tell you that entrepreneurs only care, they look at money as an obstruction to building their business. And so their goal is to get as much money as fast as possible with as little cost to their time and their cap table. And so what we saw last year was a bunch of entrepreneurs, myself included, who were like, hey, dude, I can raise a whole bunch of money based on my resume and a white paper and no hit to my cap table. Yeah, I'm in. However, that free money machine shut off as more and more projects came to market, as people started doing due diligence, as things like Tezos and some of these other projects played out.
So the market matured.
The market matured. However, I also believe that in 5 years, there will be no securities that are not digital securities. And so just as I believe all money will eventually be digital programmable money, I believe all securities will be digital securities. So we're on this journey. And just like in the internet in 1996, where you had this dip after the Netscape IPO, and everyone said, it's over, sell. If you sold then, you missed the largest, up market in the stock market in history. And this is one of those times where we're in this inflection point of the market maturing, and yet we're not quite ready for security exchanges and for security tokens, like all the mechanisms that are necessary for that to work, including banking, including trading platforms. But in terms of accelerating, it's almost like we're building up like the volcano, we're building up again before the next big eruption.
So what can we do as incubators and accelerators of blockchain businesses to better prepare our projects for that future?
I would personally say that maybe at the first stage, if we are talking about exactly the incubation period, at the first stage we should switch from traditional ICOs to user acquisition mechanisms. Because just today, maybe 2 hours ago, I spoke with my friend Malcolm, he is here in the audience, and we discussed one particular project about, it was a brand new video game. And the first question Malcolm addressed to that guy was, what's about the audience? So how many users are interested in your game, how many users are playing, etc., etc., etc. So if we're talking about the incubating period itself, I would say that the first thing is to acquire, let's say, 100,000 users, and then it'll be much, much easier to get the first fund invested, the first $10 million gained, and so on. That is my idea. Thank you.
I think the most important thing is the token economics, because as we understood, we didn't spend a lot of time on the token. As you said, we are out, we have a nice resume, and we look to much as money as possible with low cost. But this has changed, and we spent many, many weeks on the token economics and kind of put ourselves in the shoes of a traditional investor, because you would like also to get traditional money or from VCs. And this is like a second product, or you're going to take your project as an underlying, and you're going to have a token which has completely in itself a logic and understanding for investing.
Yeah, I think that's really true. One of the things ARC specializes in, and you know this because we talked about this before, I know TOS is the same, is helping our clients on the capital market side tell the story about their company. And I've seen there's this gap between if you're raising money, if you're raising money in the traditional Silicon Valley way, you basically build a deck, 10 slides, no more, no less, problem, solution, team, opportunity. You drive up and down Sand Hill Road, have 100 meetings, you get 10 people to write you a check, you're done. This is a totally different process. And the way you sell, the stories, the collateral, the messaging are very different. And what I find is, I've met some great entrepreneurs. Some of the one of our portfolio companies, I'm not going to name names, these are amazing entrepreneurs from McKinsey, from big consulting firms.
But they don't know how to tell a story.
Well, they could tell a story to the 10 investors, the 100 investors, no problem. But to tell a story, so like an investor on an exchange or a crypto investor really gets it, is a different process. It's more consumerization of that story. It's less dense, more hits driven, and more simplified. And so I think a lot of what we do with our founders is teach them how to tell their story, not just in an elevator, but 10 slides, 10 beats, problem solution, and get to the place where people understand how they're going to make money from this. And if the business doesn't make money, it's not a business.
Exactly, and we were talking earlier on with Richard about how the fundraising ICO stage is just the first step. So to better prepare the projects in 2018, you need to focus on your business model. You need to focus on how you're going to create revenue and value, not only for your stakeholders who are your token holders and equity stakeholders, but also your community, which is going to support and continue feeding this project. So instead of focusing on just fundraising, now the projects that focus on long-term goals and revenue generation and building a real business are seeing a lot more traction and success.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, is there anything else you want to add to how you prefer accelerating a project or incubating one? What kind of projects that are exciting for you that you can take and now in this existing ecosystem propel to success?
Yeah, just I want to remind you the history of the past year. So I guess you all remember that maybe a year ago, if anybody does have an ICO, it would probably be extremely successful because it was something really new. Later on, some additional proofs were needed, like you remember all that thing about advisors. So if you do have 10 very popular, well-known names on the market, then you'll be successful, probably. Later on, you remember that all these advisors they got in trouble, and later the new wave of partnerships. If you do have 3 or 4 partnerships, then you're really good, etc., etc., etc. But all these ICOs, they got the money only for their idea. So they didn't have any audience. They couldn't show any numbers of growth. It always was an idea, packed with different names around. That's it. And I guess nowadays we could see that ICOs that do have behind them only the names, only the ideas, for them it becomes harder and harder to get some initial funds. And my idea is that today, at this stage, we need to get some users, some audience thirsty, and then show the growth. And only after that, we could start an ICO. That is the process, how does it work in many other industries, and it comes here at this market.
It feels much better to have an asset-backed project rather than having just a white paper. In any case, discussions with investors, etc., even also with customers, even not delivering what you actually promise. That's the one part. And the other part, obviously it's coming more into traditional way, which we actually understand more.
Yeah, I think the French phrase "and then the deluge," initially there were so few projects that you could sort of look through them. I used to get 30 deals a week, and then we were getting 30 deals a day. We kind of shut off that email, actually, because we just decided we only wanted deals that came through intermediaries that we already know, that we trust. Because there was just so many companies, many who were, Justin and I were talking about this, the guy at Y Combinator who didn't raise at demo day would reframe his project as a blockchain project and show up on our doorstep. And I was like, you didn't raise on demo day at Y Combinator. How would you raise through crypto? Why is this going to be better? Or what have you done differently? And why is this a blockchain? Why blockchain? Why now? So I think that we really right now are in this sort of recovery period. But if you look at Seth Godin, that recovery period is really important because then the next boom comes. And that's what I'm waiting for, is that sort of next uptick. And I think it's going to be much bigger than the last one, although probably not 1,400% return.
Excellent. So I do want to recap because we touched on some very interesting points here, and if I miss anything, please feel free to jump. The market has matured. There are a lot more projects that need funding than funding is available, and I can attest to that. At the beginning of 2017 in January, there were 5 ICOs going on, so you could read about them, talk to the founders, really do proper analysis. I think January of 2018, there were 1,500 or 2,000 the same month. So year over year, the exponential increase in not the quality, but the quantity of ICOs has created a lot of competition for the funds available. And also, now the projects need to have some substance, have a product, maybe assets, maybe some investment already in it through equity, as well as a strong community. And that's, I mean, a community is what brought us all together here and to this stage. So it goes without saying that if you are in the blockchain space and you don't pay attention to building a strong community, you're going to suffer. It's going to be a costly lesson to learn. Anything you want to add before we conclude? No. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Any questions? Can we take questions? Do we have time?
It was just working.
Would you like this one?
Yes.
So you mentioned tokenomics, and that's been obviously super important to help a company tell their story around their token economic model. But we're like a year and a half since that started being important, and we haven't seen many companies actually use a token economic model to do anything interesting except Binance. I think that's the only like app coin that's made any sense yet. Are you guys seeing anything different from that or other growth, or is this just a mechanism to get investment?
So it's interesting. I was just, Komal Sethi, I don't know who knows him here, is the COO of AngelList, and I were just talking about this. Is like, we both spent this whole year getting sort of an amateur MBA in economic theory. And then we kind of looked back and said, all right, so now that we've learned all this stuff, what payment token was what we were looking at? Give us an example of a payment token that's actually working. And it's only the gambling sites that I could find that really are actually doing that. Does anyone else have a good example of that, where there's a CryptoKitties?
I actually want to simplify that question, because when you say tokenomics or token economics, it sounds very complex and like you need to elaborate. For a token to work, at least it has to have a circular economy so that it can sustain itself. And I've seen some interesting models there, but not if you're looking for some very complex and mature system.
Well, the question is, we've seen a lot of models in white papers, right? And we've all sat down and like had really cool whiteboard sessions. I know I've been part of several, and Titus has been a member of many, many more. But have any of these come to fruition yet?
Right. That's a really good question. What do you?
Still too early. Still too early. Any other questions?
Questions? Just remember to tell us your company and where you're from.
Yes, Sean Barger, Equilibrium. We're working on something that's coming out later on this year. We can't really talk about it yet, but in all of our research, one of the things that I feel from the marketplace, and I'd like to get your comments on it, is it seems to me that there's a a liquidity variable that nobody's talking about, which is the fact that there's trillions of dollars in China clamoring to get out of the country. So I'm wondering, how do you think that's going to affect ICOs for the foreseeable future? Because it seems to me like we're just at the beginning, but I'd like to hear your comments on where you think that's going, because it seems like there's a lot of liquidity and there's a lot of need to move money from one point to another or get it into a different form. And I think that's going to drive a lot of ICOs.
I feel like I'm dominating here. It's interesting. I have a bunch of friends who are on the enforcement side of various three-letter agencies in the U.S. And we had this dinner party for a friend of mine who's getting married, and they all kind of went on the attack on me because I work in cryptocurrency and blockchain. And their view was that the primary use of Bitcoin, primarily, was for Chinese, Russian, and Arabic dark money, call it gray money or black money, to move from place to place through these transactions. And they actually had pretty compelling arguments. So I went back and I asked a bunch of questions of a bunch of friends of mine who are smarter than me, who can look at the traffic, and I just think it's not true. I think just like bags of US dollars and suitcases, there is that activity, and I do see a lot of activity in China, and frankly, the only market where I'm seeing my companies raise money right now is in Asia, where most of them are in Seoul and Singapore and China this week and next week. But the fact is I think everyone in the world knows that securitization and security tokens and the blockchain is the future. I think we're just trying to figure out how that's going to work. And jurisdiction by jurisdiction, the velocity has been inconsistent.
Actually, I'm going to give you a practical response. It's very difficult for that money to go into ICOs for two reasons. One, they're already having a difficult time moving the money in fiat version. Whether it's renminbi or foreign currency, it's very difficult to move the money out of mainland China. You would think that would be a fuel, that would be a reason why they would get more cryptocurrency involved. But then you have the challenge of buying cryptocurrency with renminbi, which in and itself is very difficult and costly. So those trillions of dollars that are accumulated, sandbagged, waiting to get out, have to go through two conversion points to get into ICOs. And then you have the ICO fluctuation. So let's say you're a Chinese billionaire trying to get his or her net worth out of the country. An ICO wouldn't be your first point of landing, because you can put in $1 billion in an ICO and next day it's only worth 100 million. And you just wiped out 90% of your net worth, although now it's outside of China and illiquid still. But ICOs wouldn't be the first place to park. Now, Bitcoin and Ethereum, or one of the top 5-10 currencies by market cap, are highly more likely to be used. But again, with large chunk transactions, there are a lot of difficulties with KYC, AML, as well as the conversion points, because it's costly to get that money out. So I don't foresee a big impact on ICOs, maybe more of an impact on the top 5 currencies market cap.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. It's a very interesting one. I didn't conduct any research about that specific topic, but I remember an approximate numbers regarding internet itself. When internet was created, and later on when it started to be used globally, I remember that 80, maybe 75% of traffic was about porno, and it was, and only maybe 10, maybe 12 years ago it changed, and all other, just the whole system changed, and maybe 51% of traffic now belongs to a different topic, and probably it's correct that every new technology, every new thing, starting from nuclear weapons, continuing with internet, and continuing nowadays with the blockchain technology, human beings are trying to use it in some bad way. Yeah, that's correct. I would say that probably your statement, more or less, it's correct. And only at the time we'll shift the focus from this negative side to something that will help us to build a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for the questions, and let's have a round of applause for the panelists, please. Thank you.